it's the impression that nothing has happened, but we have been working really a lot. For instance, especially with Ukraine and Moldova, the screening process has been done in the record time. Also dealing with the member states. So you have mentioned Merz and Costa and all the others. Whatever it would help, everybody should, and we are speaking also to Mr. Orban. So, you know, I believe that the member states are the one who can push, and the member states and all we together, we will find a solution. In the past, this is the beauty of the European Union, that we have been able to find solutions to the most impossible problems in the past.
And you get creative. There's a lot of questions, but I'm being told, you know,
creative is a good word. Yes,
it's always a way to do it in Europe. And I wonder just very briefly, however, because you know I could talk to you for an hour now, but. When you look at unanimity, you obviously say we need to find a way around this because otherwise the process won't end. The other big pillar of internal reform of the EU is the countries that join, the member states would argue, they need to be aligned with us. We need to make sure that the new members are not going to make life more difficult. So how is the EU at 27 going to be managed in a better, more efficient way when we see at 27 is complicated at 21? Would you say, for example, if a new country joins, they need to be put to the test and they need to be put on probation, maybe for 5, 10 years? We need to see how they behave before they become a full member.
In order to fulfill the criteria, what you have said at the beginning, that we have to be stronger, this is the most important. So there are two important points. First is that the member state, the candidate countries really have to be ready. They really have to go through the whole process and being ready, also applying all the so-called Copenhagen criteria, having a strong economy, institutions, and so on. On the other side, we also have to be ready, and this is the parallel process. So the Commission will, in the next weeks, put out the results of the so-called pre-enlargement review, where we have to see inside us what we have to do, that we will be ready to function also when we will get some new members on board. You know, my country, Slovenia, joined the EU in 2004. 10 countries joined. It was 90 million people, and we survived. Now we are speaking about Albania, 2.78 million, and we are speaking about Montenegro. It is a kind of 600,000 people. It's like Antwerp. So,
but very nice weather.
Very nice weather and very nice people and very nice coast and mountains and everything, of course. But should really this a bit more than 3 million new citizens be such a big problem? Of course not. But I can understand the concerns of the member states, of the citizens, and that we have to talk about it. So what I expect now, and I hope that we will do this together, all the stakeholders, to discuss about the future of the European Union, and it could also be that we speak about the decision-making process.
And this idea that we hear now, yes, you're a member, but you don't have a veto, some rights, yes.
No.
Do you like the idea of Class A and Class B members?
No, I'm strictly against, but this is my personal opinion. No, we cannot have two-class members. You know, when Slovenia joined the EU, we have been equal like Germany. You know, we were so happy at that time, and France and so on. I'm exaggerating a bit, but no, we have to enable that all the members will be equal. But already exists, you know, through the accession treaties, we can define transitional periods. For instance, Poland has gotten now, you know, people speak about the danger of the agriculture from Ukraine. You know, when Poland joined, it was the same issue with their agriculture. So Poland has gotten 20 years of the transitional period. We have transitional periods. We have different areas where we really can talk about to enable a full integration and really strong EU.
And just as we reach to the end, there are 2 points that I would like to clarify. One is, you said everywhere that we put out in the report, we stand by it and we think this is a good report. Obviously, with Ukraine, you say they have made a lot of progress, but you also point out to the idea of rule of law and corruption needs to be tackled further. As you can see, the government of President Zelensky, he spoke with us, he said, I haven't fully seen it, but I'm not sure I fully agree with that description. What did you mean by that? It's been interpreted as very negative. Is it that negative?
No, not at all. But, you know, the report for Ukraine and any other country is more than 100 pages. And some people have read just a few lines. It is really good to see the whole report. And for Ukraine, it is clearly a huge development, a huge progress. But there are some points, and this is nearly for every candidate country. Just to remind you, why are we doing this enlargement reports? It is, we do this to point out what is running well, and to see where we need some improvements. And one of the areas where we see the danger in Ukraine is, and we have experienced this on July 22nd, where actually a law has been adopted which was making their two main anti-corruption agency less independent. And this is not good. You know, it is very, very important that the country, not just Ukraine, is having independent anti-corruption institutions. And this was a clear backsliding. And this shouldn't be the case. The law has been repaired, not yet to 100%, so we are still working on this, and this is why we have put this into the report.
And so in all of this, you still say the European Union is going to be stronger with them inside?
Yes, once they will join, but they will not be able to join unless they will be prepared. So this is a circle we have to follow.
Just very quickly, because I think we have a responsibility on this as journalists. Georgia, the language that you have used is, at least to my knowledge, the most severe I have ever seen in a report like this. If I understand what you say, where you talk about massive and very serious backsliding on everything. You talk about authorities that no longer seem to be interested in this process. If I read that, the way that I would interpret it is, this is the end of the road. But at the same time, there is a people, and we all know this, who are prepared to do almost anything to now join the European Union. How do you bridge this gap?
You're right. This is the worst enlargement report for any candidate country ever, but rightly so. So what their government is doing and lying to their people, they are saying that they are bringing Georgia closer to the EU. They are bringing Georgia away from the EU. So it is a clear backsliding on many areas, especially on the fundamentals, the rule of law, anti-corruption, media freedom. You know, the government, what is the government doing? The government is not following the interests of their own people.
What happens to the people of Georgia, however, because they say they want in very clearly. Is there a way to bridge this gap?
You know, that's why the only option is that the government of Georgia will revise many laws who are clearly anti-European. They should stop putting their political opponents or journalists in jail. They really should start not oppressing anymore the organizations of civil society. You know, we have difficulties to support them because as long as they hear we would love to support them, they are in the danger that they will be put in jail. So yes, it is clearly Georgia still a candidate country, but for the Commission only on the paper. And we will do everything to support media and especially civil society organizations.
And just lastly, by 2030, the end of this mandate, what does the European Union look like? Is it 29? Is it 30? Who's in it?
Oh, I don't know. I can't see in the stars, but I will work endlessly and tirelessly on this project in which I really believe. For the first time after many years, the prospects of the enlargement are there. How many countries it will be, it is not that much important. Important is that actually we will get stronger, as you have said, and that we will make our union of values and democracy bigger. And I will close with this, if I may. You know, in the past, the European Union has always been capable to include the countries which have been for instance, Portugal, Spain, Greece. We included them into the EU after the end of the dictatorships. After the Berlin Wall fell, we have been able to include, for the first time, countries from the Eastern Europe. And now we are again in this historical moment. So I am positive there will be some new members. How many? Let's meet in 2030. No, 2029, because my mandate ended in 2029. So we have to meet before December the 1st, 29. Then we can talk about the numbers. Okay.
We'll invite you again in 2029.
Okay.
Commissioner Cost, thank you so much for this important conversation in Euronews. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Tadeo, for that, and of course to the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Koss, for that fascinating interview. Thank you so much for being with us. So now we have heard the view from the European Commission, but what about the European Parliament? To get some more views, Euronews had the opportunity to speak to 27 MEPs and ask them what they felt. Take a look.
Is that what we need?
We need it to be a reality.
Enlargement is crucial.
It's not necessary.
With Europe at a turning point, enlargement is more than just ambition.
The normal process of unification of Europe.
It's a very, let's say, delicate question.
It's a defining choice, not only for the Union's future itself.
Enlargement is our security guarantee.
It really can be a win-win-win situation.
But for those who want to come in too,
we think about them, we consider them.
They are our brothers, but they have to clean up their houses.
The European Union is the best alternative that they have.
a defining choice that questions.
Why does the European establishment always think about getting bigger? It's like a European empire.
It's about all peoples around one table of European nations.
It's a defining choice for Europe's security.
Enlargement of Europe is extremely important now when we are facing external enemies.
Either we invite the candidate countries to join our family, or they will be invited by somebody else who wants to fight against us.
For Europe's democracy.
We have our own freedom, so we are based on values.
We want them to be true democracies. We want them to fight corruption.
They need to respect minority rights and human rights.
Comply to the Copenhagen criteria with the rule of law.
For Europe's economy.
It's a big boost to economy. New members, new industries.
Many workers from Eastern Europe ended up underpaid and without any protection. It cannot happen again. It must not happen again.
For Europe's voice.
It's important for the European Union to keep that level of influence in the Western Balkans.
The more members we have in the European Union, the less its member states can directly influence political decision-making.
You give part of your sovereignty, of course, but you get a seat at the table.
For Europe's unity.
Our motto is united in diversity. Diversity is always positive.
Learn to live with one another, learn to understand one another in harmony and in peace.
Peace, security, stability, and prosperity.
Is the start of a new show that we're going to launch, because here at Euronews we're very ambitious people and we're always thinking, how can we make it better? So this is a new show that we will premiere on Wednesdays on Euronews. Every night you'll be able to watch it. It's called The Ring, and it brings together two different MEPs to have two different perspectives and two views. Obviously, as you know, Euronews is committed to showing all views in debate, and this is what this show will be about. And today, as I mentioned, we premiere the first episode live with you, and it will be hosted, of course, by my colleague, Maeve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. Hello there and welcome to The Ring, our brand new talk show here on Euronews. Each week, two elected members of the European Parliament will go face to face on some of the pressing issues that they're debating inside the European hemicycle in Brussels and Strasbourg. And the tone for this show, The Ring, has been set by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Europe is in a fight for a continent that is whole and at peace, a fight for our values and our democracies.
But what kind of fight and what kind of values, what kind of future do we want here? That is exactly what we will explore on this brand new show, The Ring. And the topic, of course, for this very first edition is EU enlargement. And we're thrilled to be joined by two members of the European Parliament, David McAllister and Mark Botenga. Let's get to know them more in this clip.
David McAllister, veteran member of the European Parliament, Chair of Foreign Affairs, Vice President of the centre-right EPP Group, a leading voice in European and transatlantic affairs. And when enlargement talks with Albania and North Macedonia were delayed, he didn't hold back. The EU failed to show leadership, courage and strategic vision, he said. Mark Botenga, Belgian MEP. A fierce defender of workers' rights and public services, he's one of the European Parliament's strongest critics of austerity and corporate power. He voted against the EU's economic aid package for the Western Balkans, warning it comes loaded with neoliberal conditions that, in his words, would deepen the crisis instead of solving it.
So, Mark Botenga and David McAllister, welcome to the stage.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about being our very first contenders here on The Ring?
Lovely. Very excited.
Yes?
Very.
Well, you're so very, very welcome. We have, of course, a lot to discuss. So let's kick off with yourself, David McAllister. Croatia was the last country to join back in 2013. Who will be the next to join and by when?
Well, there are 10 candidate countries, and I'm very sure one of the 10 will be. In the moment, Montenegro is the front runner, then comes Albania. But apart from these 10, there are also some developments in the High North. There are new debates in Iceland and Norway and even in Greenland, who perhaps might also want to join the European Union.
Indeed, as we're hearing, EU enlargement, the momentum is indeed there. Is it for you? Are you in favour of EU enlargement, Mark Botenga?
Well, I'm not against or in favour of EU enlargement. I think we need to see why we do it and what we want to obtain, what's going to be the consequences. Because there have been consequences for working class people of previous enlargements. And we've seen that today as well. You know, there have been protests of farmers against liberalisation of trade, for example, with Ukraine. There have been victims. We've seen social dumping practices that have made people very skeptical of these enlargements. So what I would say is we need to get our house in order socially before we risk having the same effects again.
Can we afford EU enlargement?
The history of the European integration has always been the history of enlargement. We started with 6, we became 9, 12, 15, 25, 27, even 28 members. There are 48, 49 countries in Europe, and 10 out of these want to become members of the European Union, and we should support these countries in their aspirations. But of course, in the end, all the necessary criteria need to be met, politically, financially, economically, that's clear. But I am happy to see that further countries want to join our family of nations because they share our values and they believe that they are stronger and better off together with us.
And we saw the so-called report cards or progress reports coming out today from the European Commission this week in Brussels. What are your views on them?
Well, obviously we've received these hundreds of pages just recently, so we're not going to pretend any one of us, I think, to have read or studied them in depth. However, one thing I looked at, and which I'm disappointed by, is that, of course, we know this is no longer just a merit-based process. There's a geopolitical dimension to it now. No one's going to deny that. But what I have seen is that over the last years, I've seen a lot of protests from trade unions, International Trade Union Confederation, European Trade Union Confederation, saying there's a clear backsliding on working class democracy in Ukraine. There have been new laws. There's been even the Secretary General of the Federation of Trade Unions of Ukraine that's been put under house arrest, right? And the Commission doesn't seem to take that seriously. And I think, you know, you already have a martial law and you're attacking civil society in this way. That needs to be on the agenda. And what I'm seeing is that we're abandoning basically the criteria just because of geopolitics.
Is that a point that you could address, David McAllister? Many feel that the EU is not working for them, those that are in the club already.
There are 10 candidate countries in the moment, but the big difference between Ukraine and the other 9 is Ukraine is going through a fully fledged war, a Russian war of aggression. And of course, you need to always consider under which enormous pressure and challenges Ukraine lies. Yes, Ukraine is still far away from meeting all the necessary EU criteria. Ukraine is on the way, it's a marathon. And of course, also the Commission has been very outspoken in also criticizing what is not going well in Ukraine. But my impression is that the Ukrainian government usually responds in a positive way to the criticism coming from the Commission and the European Parliament. That's why we need to also work on social standards and workers' rights in Ukraine, just like in any other candidate country. But please, we need to bear in mind this country is under attack by a vicious regime in the Russian Federation.
There, Mark Botenga?
If you are under attack, is your priority to crack down on trade unionists? Is your priority then to say we need to liberalize the energy sector, the banking sector? No, I mean, your priority should be to bring back peace, to get back your sovereignty and so on. So this argument of, you know, war in order to justify social repression, I think is just out of scope.
Well, Mark, I'm very sorry, I didn't say that. I said that, of course, Ukraine has to also meet all the necessary criteria. And there are a lot of things where Ukraine still has to do a lot of homework. But in general, we need to just consider under which enormous challenge they are, fighting a war against Russia on the one hand, and on the other hand, preparing to join the European Union. That is very impressive and that deserves respect. But once again, I am not arguing, I'm not defending this. In the end, they will have to meet all the criteria, including the social criteria you have mentioned.
So we agree being disappointed by the Commission.
What about internal reforms, David McAllister? What kind of internal reforms does the EU need to do? Its own homework, perhaps?
Well, the one thing is that further countries will at one day probably join our European Union. It depends, of course, when. On the other hand, we need to prepare in the meantime. We are operating with a set of rules and institutions which stem from a time where we are 9, 12, 15 members. We have to reform. We have to get ready for enlargement ourselves. That means we need to strengthen the European Parliament. We have to, in the Council, introduce further qualified majority voting. Unanimity is something which comes from the time where we were 6 or 9 or 12 member states. It doesn't work with 27, it will not work with 28, 29 or 30. And also we need to discuss, can this system continue that every single member state has an own commissioner? Already the commission in the moment is rather large.
I'm sure that's something you'd agree with too, Mark Botenga.
Well, the Commission is rather large. This is one thing. But what I would be saying is if we want, first of all, to avoid a social, massive negative social impact on our societies, there's a number of rules, European rules, that we need to revise in a very ambitious way. And I'm thinking about subcontracting. I'm thinking about posted workers. I'm thinking about pluri-activity. And I'm thinking about letterbox companies. Because if we do not tackle this socially, we're going to have a massive backlash. And we've seen these protests. We've seen protests of farmers in Poland and Italy. We've seen protests of truckers from Poland and the Slovak Republic.
But what about the backlash from countries in the Western Balkans who've been waiting for so long to enter the
Absolutely. And I really understand the frustration of the Western Balkans and of these countries. Because indeed, they've been waiting for a long time. Other countries perhaps even longer. And they feel disrespected. They feel disrespected when they see, that certain other countries in there get a pass.
And now they're hearing about this potential probation period. What are your thoughts on this?
I beg your pardon?
Like not having a fully fledged membership, a trial period?
Well, in the moment,
being allowed in but not having a veto?
Well, until now, we have argued you are either in or out. You're a fully fledged member of the European Union or not. I think that we have to get away from this black and white debate, and that means that the solution is the gradual integration of candidate countries into the European Union. So we begin with the gradual integration in the single market and in other important policy fields, and then the next step is the EU membership. And after EU membership, the next step is then to join the core zone of the European Union. That means the Euro and the Schengen cooperation area. I think that is the way. And also we need to perhaps think out of the box, how can we address the concerns of some of our member states that additional members might at the beginning be hampering the further integration process. But I mean, we've managed that until now, and I'm very sure with candidate countries 28, 29 and 30 joining, we will be able to do so.
You agree with that, or do you think it could be completely dysfunctional?
Well, it could obviously be completely dysfunctional. That's why I'm saying, you know, we need the social guarantees, very clearly. We need upwards convergence, not a downward spiral of dumping on the one hand. And secondly, if we do not involve the people, if we think this is all going to be decided in Brussels, in Strasbourg, there will be a backlash democratically as well, because people will not take it. People will be like, hey, my working life, my salary is being affected. And so that is something we need to deal with.
I don't always necessarily agree with Mark, but on this point, he's right. Yes, indeed, we have to convince our citizens, we have to convince the people, but the social standards which are so important to you, and they're just as important to me. I think one way to guarantee these social standards in the candidate countries is that we go through a thorough enlargement process, because in the end, all the criteria need to be met, and that's why enlargement is a huge opportunity, not only for the people, but also for the businesses and the employers and the employees in these countries.
Interesting, on this very first edition of The Ring, you're starting to agree with each other, because politicians, it's all about building compromises, of course.
A German Christian Democrat and a Belgian socialist, I mean, we're wide apart usually.
And now it is time, in fact, to show our viewers a little taste of what it's like inside the hemicycle, when, as some of you may have seen, MEPs get the chance to pose questions to each other, sometimes very provocative. David McAllister, please start with your question for Mark Botenga.
Mark, if I understood you correctly, you're rather enlargement skeptical and you want to not accelerate the process. You believe that we need to take our time. On the other hand, grey zones will exist. Grey zones will be created, and China and the Russian Federations are just there to fill these grey zones. Why do you do that?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I would send you back the question. You know, Russia and European Parliament, we've criticized that very long, that Russia thinks in terms of spheres of influence, you know, and they try to influence other countries to do what they want, to copy their model or impose their model. The way I hear you speak sometimes about enlargement is very similar. Where I'm saying, should the European Union then enter in this logic of spheres of influence? I don't think we should. You know, and I don't think we should be interfering in other countries. They have their democratic processes, their local evolutions, and we should respect this. And this might indeed end up in enlargement. You know, I'm not principally against. But what we should not be doing is copying a model of countries that we criticize.
Mark Botenga, you now have the opportunity to pose a question to David McAllister.
Well, let me come back to what we were discussing before. I mean, you said that indeed social convergence upward is important. Then I'm going to ask you, why is EPP systematically opposing, you know, ambitious social proposals that could basically end or limit social dumping? I'm thinking, for example, of banning subcontracting below 1 or 2 levels. I'm thinking of, for example, forcing letterbox companies to have real activity in the country they're officially based. Think of Slovenia, think of a number of other countries. Why doesn't EPP take that social agenda seriously, aside when we're discussing very abstractly about enlargement?
Okay, thank you for your question. Not directly related to the enlargement countries, I understand.
But it's very close to your heart, of course.
Well, look, first of all, the EPP has always been the leading party when it comes to further developing the social market economy. We are not supporters of free capitalism. We support the social market economy, which Ludwig Erhard, for instance, in Germany, created, and this is our model for Europe. And this includes, of course, social standards, workers' rights, labor rights. We have always been at the forefront of this, and I strongly believe, by the way, we also need a strong social pillar within the European Union, because we need the citizens on board, and the European integration project should not be an elitist project of the well-off, but of all, and this, of course, includes the hard-working people we have in Europe. That's why we can have a more detailed discussion on these matters, but I have to add one point. Mark, I do not agree what you said, that EU enlargement is interfering in third countries. These countries have voluntarily taken the decision to join our family because they believe in democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And I will always support countries and governments and parliaments who want to go exactly this way.
I will
answer that one.
Let me just reply to that. That is a very naive vision, and you know you don't share that, of how these processes go. You know the European Union has been very active in sponsoring NGOs and media to influence public debate, you know, in these countries. We've done this in Ukraine, we've done it in Georgia, we've done it in many countries. And you can say this is legitimate, and we could argue about this, saying it is legitimate, it's not legitimate. But the other side, you know, the Russians that want their sphere of influence are doing very similar things. What I'm saying is that we need to listen to social movements over there and not prioritize our own corporate interests. Because what we're seeing today, honestly, if you see the Finnish minister going to Georgia to protest with the protesters, you can say, you know, if a Russian would do that, we would consider it unacceptable interference, and rightly so. If we're doing it, we're saying, well, you know, it's a support for democracy. So this thin line, and there we need to be very clear that there might be double standards in the way we look at things.
Well, Mark, I think here we have some clear differences between the two of us. When it comes to interfering in candidate countries, I wouldn't at first think of EU member states. These countries are being flooded by malign Russian influence. Absolutely. Fake news, propaganda. They are trying to destabilize democracy. Mark, I think the socialists, your party, you should deal more with this horrific Russian foreign malign influence we have in Europe.
Just to make clear, because otherwise we're going to get some problems with colleagues, I'm not from the socialist group. Huh?
Well, how do I call you then?
SND, you said the way the left group, but okay, I mean, just to, in order for our socialist colleagues not to get a heart attack.
Okay, well, what are you then?
We're the left group.
You're just a lefty. Okay, well, when
it's like
Mark the leftist. Okay.
I'm glad you're getting to know each other here on the ring. Let's perhaps bring in another voice on this very important discussion of EU enlargement that has made a political comeback. That is the voice of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy, who spoke at the European Enlargement Summit here in Brussels, and he said that Donald Trump is supporting Ukraine in becoming a member of the European Union, that Trump understands that this is the will of the Ukrainian people. But my question is, what do you think of this statement, and do we really need the approval of the White House for this kind of thing?
The brave women and men in Ukraine are not only defending their territorial sovereignty and integrity every day, they are also defending our European values. They are defending the European peace and security architecture. And if there's one people in Europe who has shown how committed they are to the European integration progress, then it's the brave women and men from Ukraine. They deserve all our support.
Mark Botenga.
Well, I think Donald Trump has launched one of the most aggressive attacks on Ukraine's sovereignty we have seen over the last years. I mean, you've seen obviously the horrible war of Russia, you know, occupying one-fifth of the country. But what has Donald Trump done? He's come saying, you know, you want peace, I can guarantee that, but in exchange I want your natural resources. Now that is a direct attack on the economic sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. So I don't think he should be giving lessons on what sovereignty means.
And what about Moldova? We also heard from Maia Sandu, the president of Moldova, saying that she also one day wants to be a member of the European Union. Can the EU afford a poor country like Moldova? David McAllister.
Moldova, who's ever been there, knows great people, great country, and they are on their way. I urge the Council to open the accession negotiations with Moldova now in autumn. They are waiting for this desperately, and the Moldovans have shown their European commitment despite all the aggressive, malign Russian influence. The people in Moldova stood strong and voted 3 times in favor of a pro-European orientation at the referendum, at the presidential elections, and just most recently at the parliamentary elections.
Mark Botenga?
Why not? Let's talk. I mean, I'm in favor of talks. Moldova, as you know, is not an easy situation with the Transnistrian situation, so that will need to be solved. Let's not pretend that doesn't exist. But we always need to keep talking. What I'm saying is let's keep talking with the respect of local democracy. You know, let's keep talking and let's not accelerate things beyond that in the hope to, you know, eat them up quicker than the others, because that's not what Europe should be.
Well, now we've heard the view of the MEPs. I'm curious also to get the view of the European public, to hear how they feel about EU enlargement. We've been digging into the latest Eurobarometer survey, which is, of course, the data accumulated by the European Commission that tests the temperature, if you like, of the European public. And according to the latest data, 56% of Europeans are in favour of EU enlargement, 39% show mistrust, and 14% think their country would not benefit at all. The pros of those polled were that the EU could benefit from larger markets, there'd be more work and more skilled labour, and the cons, many said, the cost for the taxpayers, the risk of corruption, organised crime and terrorism, and also uncontrolled migration. Mark Botenga, a reaction to that data.
I think if you look at the Eurobarometer, one of the very interesting points is as well that most people don't believe they will benefit themselves from enlargement. You know, they say, okay, why not the idea? The idea is nice, and the idea, this is also why in the EU bubble it's so, you speak about enlargement because it's nice, like Europe expanding. But many people are afraid and know they will not benefit. We've seen massive population losses also in, you know, member states that joined later, Bulgaria, Romania, the Baltic countries. And that is why, and I'm coming back to this, if we do not have the strong internal social measures, and apparently EPP would be open to that, so that's the news of the day, then we cannot do this enlargement.
It is a...
Huh? Šta? Misliš?
Aggravate structural problems within the European, let's say, the subcontinent of Europe. And if we're going to do that again with now one, at least, very big member states, you know, demographically, economically, as Ukraine, we might have that in a much, much stronger version. And look at how many Germans reacted now that suddenly, you know, when President Zelensky opened the borders for young men, and you had, what was it, 100,000 young men saying immediately, you know, we want to quit Ukraine, how that reaction, you know, provoked German citizens.
I think the solution to the problem of social dumping is what we have seen in other cases, transitional periods. That we don't go from one extreme immediately to the other, but we have these transitional agreements, these transitional periods is for the free movement of labour, as we had with some Eastern European countries after 2004.
Dave,
I think that's the solution.
what about some of the cons there that we listed?
Pardon?
What about some of the cons there that we listed, the concerns that Europeans have with enlargement, be that organised crime or uncontrolled migration, the fact that it's their taxpayers' money that will have to go to them?
Absolutely, these concerns are legitimate. We need to
how do you address them?
We take this seriously. We need to better communicate. Marta Kors today said, as Enlargement Commissioner, we're in this together, and it is our duty, not only in the candidate countries, but also in the 27 member states, to convince our citizens that this is beneficial. And I named the arguments that we are stronger and better off together, and that we have much more and greater business opportunities. And in general, I would see there are 48, 49 countries in Europe. 27 are in the European Union. But the European project has always been open to all countries who lie geographically in Europe, who share our values, and are ready to go for a very challenging negotiation process. That's where we are.
And the EU does need a success story when it comes to EU enlargement. They need to make some announcements soon, especially after Jean-Claude Juncker as Commission President said, there will be no enlargement under my 5 years.
Okay, but I'm not particularly concerned with the PR needs of the European Union. That is a different thing. What I do
But otherwise
think
it could break up.
Yeah, but we need to watch out with the communication aspect of it, because I've heard this on many things. Also, development cooperation, because it always has the same undertone of like, we're doing great things, we're just not explaining them well enough to the people. I think people have real concerns. People really see an impact on their salaries, they see on their current lives, and we need to take that seriously and adapt policies, not just adapt, PR strategies. So I think this is really important. And secondly, let's on the other hand not stigmatize potential member states, because organized crime is not something that is limited to a particular country or region. I think many countries today in the European Union are affected by organized crime.
Mark, if we had applied your attitude in 2001, 2002, 2003, the enlargement in 2004 wouldn't have been possible. And I'm happy to live in a Europe. I would have been happy. I'm happy to live in a European Union where Poland, the Baltic countries, the Czech Republic, and others are also fully fledged members. The Europe is more than old Western Europe. Europe is Western, Central, and Eastern Europe. And I think that if these countries, these candidate countries, are on their way to fulfill all the necessary criteria, and I have been the rapporteur for one of the candidate countries for 5 years, I know what hard work it is. We should give them all the support, and you are playing with fears, because all these arguments you have mentioned today, I remember were exactly the same ones I heard before 2004 when the 10 Eastern and 7 European countries joined, and also when Romania and Bulgaria joined in 2007 and Croatia in 2013.
And we didn't deal with them.
Pardon?
Sorry, that's the point. We didn't deal with them. And this created fears. This created also a backlash in certain of these countries because we didn't take them seriously. And that is the point.
I will give you a good example. Croatia joined in 2013, and 12 years later, Croatia is not only a fully fledged member of the European Union, but also a fully fledged member of the Schengen area and introduced the Euro.
How many Croatians are forced to leave their country to get a decent work in Germany? Croatians now feel forced. You know that German courses are big business in Croatia because there's not enough investment in the Croatian productive economy. And so this is something that the Croatians struggle with. And I want to listen to the Bulgarian trade unions, to the Romanian trade unions, to the Polish trade unions that are saying we are not getting out of this what we as workers deserve.
And here we're getting a real glimpse of what the debates inside the European hemicycle are like. That was the view of Mark Botenga, the view of David McAllister. I'd like to hear your view. Please reach out to us here, thering@euronews.com. But before we come to a close, we have a bit of a rapid buzzer round for our two contenders. I will pose a very short question and I require a very short answer. Just yes or no. Mark Botenga, is the future of the European Union bright? Yes or no?
If we fundamentally change policies, yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Are opt-outs a good idea for joining member states? Opt-outs, are they a good idea?
Opt-outs?
Opt-outs. So, for example, you become a member of the European Union, but not of the euro currency. Opt-outs.
Opt-outs. Oh, right. Yes.
Are opt-outs a good idea?
We've already seen this. Can be an option.
Should Turkey join the EU one day, Mark Botenga?
I think for the moment, neither the EU nor Turkey is asking that.
Yes or no?
Under the given circumstances, no.
Should countries with anti-LGBTQI+ laws be blocked from joining the EU, Mark Botenga?
I think that's one of the fundamental rights that should be a condition indeed.
Mark Botenga really struggling there with the yes or no answers.
No, sorry, yes.
Dave McAllister, yes. In your view?
Yes.
And should geopolitical considerations like countering Russian or Chinese influence justify faster EU enlargement?
Yes.
Very dangerous, and I'm going to continue struggling with yes or no.
Has the EU...
What, Russian and Chinese influence, you're struggling?
No, I'm not struggling with Russia or Chinese influence. What I'm saying is, should we... That's always a disadvantage speaking to a Euro bubble audience, of course. But what I'm saying is that the best way to deal with that is not necessarily by an unfair enlargement process.
Final question. Have you agreed with anything you've heard from your opponent today? Have you agreed with anything that you have heard from your opponent today?
Look, I know Mark Botenga. He's a member of our committee. And I would say he's a staunch fighter for social rights. And that's where I would give him credit.
And what about you, Mark Botenga?
No, absolutely. I think we share certain ideas of that Europe should become more democratic and clearly also more social. So I'm going to take the EPP up on this. I mean, this is going to be a starting point for a new cooperation.
And that point brings this very special first edition of The Ring to an end. A round of applause. Thank you so much, David McAllister and Mark Botenga. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll be live every Wednesday night on Euronews. See you very soon. Take care.
Mark, shake hands.
Well done, men. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Maeve. Of course, that is a ring that will be on your television on Wednesday night. The idea that we have is how do we take the Parliament into your homes? And of course, this is a format that we're very proud of and will be, as I mentioned, on Euronews every Wednesday on prime time. Now, moving on, remember when we started, we talked about all the leadership, the people, the faces driving this process. They are all with us today. One of those countries is a strategic country, but you heard it also from the European Commissioner before, facing some serious challenges is Serbia. For many years, it was seen as a front runner, but obviously it's not a secret. The process has stalled. We're now going to debate with the Serbian president, who's with us today, Aleksandar Vučić, and of course, my colleague, Stefan Grob. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Mr. President. So glad you did. Please. Hello and welcome to the Europe Conversation. I'm Stefan Grobe. My guest today is the President of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, a man whose political journey an American news magazine once described as from nationalist hawk to devout Europeanist. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm privileged to be with you here.
The article I was referring to was from 2014. Are you still a devout Europeanist?
In the meantime, I became a usual suspect. But as a matter of fact, yeah, I'm pro-European oriented.
Now, Serbia is an interesting country. People love Donald Trump, and people are also very fond of Vladimir Putin. I wonder, is there any excitement for Europe or European leaders? We never see any European flags during the protests.
I'm not a leader of protests, at least, but there is a very rational explanation for that. First of all, Serbs, they have always been pro-Republican oriented, speaking about United States elections, because we believe that we suffered a lot from democratic administration in 1999 and even after that. And that's why people very much welcomed President Trump's victory, and it's very obvious that he has a very large scale of popularity in my country. At the same time, Russia has been a traditional ally of Serbia for not many decades, but for centuries, and that's another reason. Speaking about European leader, people are still very rational, and they think that EU path is the best way and the best path for Serbia in the future. But speaking about the leaders, yeah, I believe that people in my country, they do respect the President Costa, Ursula von der Leyen as a commissioner leader, particularly because of different behavior comparing to all the others, because she was visiting twice or even 3 times, not only Belgrade, but the other areas, southern part of Serbia, which is a very rare case. That's what our people really respect. I cannot make comparison in popularity, but if you ask people, there is a still majority of people that would like to join the European Union.
Do you fear that Serbia becomes another Turkey, dwelling in the European waiting room forever?
Yeah, we have. In the last 3 years, I believe that some of previous speakers here were saying something about Serbia, and there are a few facts. Serbia didn't open any single chapter, any single cluster in the last 3.5 years. It very much coincides with the fact that at that time war in Ukraine started. And we were the only country that did not impose sanctions against Russia, although we have always been very supportive to territorial integrity of Ukraine, to UN Charter, to UN resolutions. And we have always been condemning an incursion and everything that was going on Ukrainian territory, but it was not enough. It became, as some of your previous guests were saying, more a sort of geopolitical game than a merit-based process, but that's how it goes. We have to face it. And at the same time, I believe that we'll have to consider all the remarks, all the demands from European Union. We need to change the level of our enthusiasm, the level of our energy, to understand what we were doing in a wrong way and to go much faster. Just to say a few words to your people here. When you say Serbia, it means, comparing to Western Balkans, it is almost 55% of overall Western Balkans export to EU. Serbia is, regarding that issue, bigger than all the others altogether. Speaking about FDI attraction, last 3 years, Serbia was more than 60% of overall in attracting foreign direct investments than all the others in the Western Balkans, much bigger. And at the same time, yes, I know that we are facing thousands of doubts from different member states because of our relationship with Beijing, with Moscow. I cannot, and I'm not going to justify myself for talking with someone. I think it's really stupid, and I'm not a pupil in an elementary school, to tell you the truth. I believe that everybody should talk to each other, and I think it's very healing, and it doesn't mean that I agree with someone if I speak to someone. And what was very strange to me, because I heard the words of criticism and I accept it, I'm the culprit, from Marta Kos. Well, it was not just that he went to Moscow. I had plenty of reasons to go there. I had to do something with the gas arrangement. I had to discuss oil industry of Serbia, which was sanctioned at that time by United States of America. And they are owners of our oil industry of Serbia. I had several issues to discuss it. What was the alternative to that? But no one actually from Europe asked me. Yes, Costa and Ursula asked me, but not the others. What was the content of our meeting? What we discussed? Because I was not interfering into Ukrainian or meddling into Ukrainian-Russian conflict, because I'm a small guy coming from a small country. I don't give a chance to myself to interfere into something big that either big countries, either European Union deserves to do so. I don't do it. I was discussing my small issues, which are big issues for my people, for Serbian people. And that was my intention. But at the end, I would like to see, if I may say this here, because I was always a big fan of that rule, audiatur et altera pars, hear the other side or listen to the other side as well. I would like to see all the leaders speaking to each other. That's the only way to overcome today's situation. But I know that nobody likes to hear it, because I see that everybody is smiling and laughing and joking when we say something bad about the others. I'm not going to make jokes about US, China, Russia. I think it's too serious to make any kind of jokes. I believe that we need talks.
There's a lot of to unpack here of what you said. I will come to that in a minute. But first, when you travel across Europe, meeting people, meeting your counterparts, how would you rate the support and the excitement within the European Union for a Serbian membership?
It's different. When I speak to Southerners, there is much bigger support. I'm going to meet President Macron in a few days. Again, I believe that we have had so far French support, Italian support. I was meeting Giorgia Meloni several times in the last 12 months. It's pretty much the same with Spaniards, Portuguese, Greek, and the others. It's a bit different when we go to Benelux countries, and it's a bit different when we speak to Baltic countries and Scandinavian countries. We'll have German Minister of Foreign Affairs very soon in Belgrade in a few days. I have spoken recently to Chancellor Merz. We had some good talks, and I hope that we'll be able to hosting him soon in Belgrade, which means January, February next year.
When you were in China earlier this year, you told a Chinese interviewer that you didn't sleep the entire night before your talks with President Xi the next day. I wonder, do you experience the same sleeplessness before a day of talks with Ursula von der Leyen?
You want to see this? I'm not a witty person at all. I believe that I'm, at least from time to time, too serious and very responsible. Yes, I cannot overcome this type of jitters, never ever. And I do a lot of preparations. And I was doing a lot of preparations last night for my meeting with Antonio Costa, and I do my best to analyze, to scrutinize everything, to learn by heart what is necessary, and I'm not ashamed to say this. And from time to time I act as a student, you know, because I believe that I should be well prepared and at least not to be surprised in any kind of discussion I might have. And this is not going to be changed, and I believe in speaking to Chinese president. It's a great opportunity for the leader, small guy from a very proud country that might deliver messages that he needs. And it's the same when I speak to Ursula, it's the same when I speak to Antonio. I know them, and I met them more times than I was meeting President Xi, but that's how it goes.
Let's talk about foreign policy, a topic you're at loggerheads with the European Union. You have repeatedly supported Ukraine's territorial integrity, even saying that Crimea and Donbas are and will always be part of Ukraine. Yet, you oppose the EU's anti-Russian sanctions. Why?
I do not oppose. We are not an EU member state. I cannot do anything on this. I cannot influence it. But I can tell you, no, I can support them once you're in the EU. I can tell you, but we are not a member of EU. But we were not. Nobody asked us about anything. They just tell us you have to align with it. And I can tell you one thing: we were under sanctions for many years, and it actually harmed ordinary people. it has always been the case, and it did not bring the very best result. And I have some doubts about the outcome of huge sanction packages that were imposed against Russia in the last 3.5 or 4 years, whatever. And but we had no influence on that. Speaking about Ukrainian territorial integrity, it means that we observe UN Charter, UN resolutions, and all the values of international public law. And also it's easy to rebook, it's easy to scold small countries like Serbia, which are not members of the club, because you have a usual suspect, you have always a good culprit for everything. And even Commissioner was saying, it's not fair, it's not good, it's not nice if he goes to Moscow. Had to go, had to take care of vital issues for my people and for my country. That was of an utmost, of super interest of my people and of my country. But I didn't hear that she was mentioning, or anybody else was mentioning, many other European leaders. And I'm not speaking about Viktor Orban. Many other European leaders that were speaking to Putin in the meantime. And I went there after 3 years of war, not before that, and I wanted to discuss our bilateral issues. Did not interfere into this big war agenda, big issues, because I know my place, I know the place of my country. And I think it's a very fair response. And as you can see, I say what I think to you here, I say the same in my country, I say it everywhere.
You said last week in an interview with a German media outlet that Serbia was ready to sell ammunition to EU countries, even if Ukraine
We were discussing that 5 years ago. We were discussing that 5 and 4 and 3 years ago.
Right, but
and I was saying to them, the following. Here's the story. We are able to produce, let's say, 155 to 160,000 of different type of shells. Mortar shells, 60 millimeters, 80, 81, 82 millimeters, both Soviet NATO calibers, 120 millimeters, from all howitzer shells, 155, 152, tank, rocket artillery shells, 122, 128, whatever millimeters, which is still equal or a bit more than France. And I said to them, we have 30,000 people that are dependent on our ability to sell this ammunition to someone. Now it's a good market. Whatever we produce, we can sell it. But when we sell it, then we got, but no one mentioned that here, because it didn't fit to their story. We got 2 very strong statements from Russian foreign intelligence against Serbia and myself, because they found some shells on Ukrainian side.
Is that why you halted the exports in June?
That was one of the reasons, because we didn't want to arm up any war infections. But now we have a problem, because we need to sell it to someone, and we'll sell it to whomever we can in order to earn some money, but we'll try to take care and not to see that ammunition in that war zone. But it happens from time to time. At the end, we'll have to pay our workers.
Okay. So we've heard...
And tell me, is there something that is not rational?
No, absolutely. I'm not saying you're irrational, but I just wonder, what is the change of heart? When in June you banned the exports, and now you're saying we're ready to...
It's not a change. We need to survive. I'm not saying that we are going to give it to Russians or to Ukrainians. I say that we need to sell it to someone in the world.
Okay. Speaking of survival, your country was once seen as a front runner in the race of EU membership.
Before the war in Ukraine.
Before the war in Ukraine. But
yes.
now the EU Commission is saying there's a backsliding of the rule of law in Serbia, insufficient reform, and no detectable
it's not seen in
progress. Now, my question is the EU too harsh on Serbia?
I would like to say that, but I promised myself not to do it. Yes, I do my best to keep my word. They asked me to change my narrative, otherwise I would say so. But I'm not going to do it. It means that now let me use this great, even Euronews bureaucratic language. And you can see that I'm still able to learn it. Serbia is very much committed to its EU path and will take it in a very serious and responsible way. All the remarks, all the demands from EU partners, and considering it will change our attitudes and our stances on different issues and will improve our behavior in the future, and we hope that the European Union will notice it. Thank you very much. This is how it goes.
EU Commissioner Kos said that that Serbia has too much presidential power, and that everything
that's an issue.
Everything about enlargement is done by the president, and that's bad. What do you say? What do you say to that?
Fully agree with her. See, learned a lesson.
Okay.
Good news is I'm not going to be the president within a year and month, 13 months. That's a good news. Then some other people will do it.
Okay. I want to talk one question, if I may, sir, about the domestic situation. We've been seeing protests for a year now, following.
We've been seeing protests for 11 years in Serbia.
All right. Following the Novi Sad catastrophe,
yes.
my question is: are you worried that things might get out of hand, that there is an escalation of the protests? And also, if I may, do you think that the country is changing faster than you have thought?
Our country, I'm amazed with the changes that we provided. You, dear Stefan, come to Belgrade. You wouldn't recognize the city, not from your own experience, but not even from the photos you've seen. Each time, let's say, my friend Mario David is coming to Belgrade, he has to realize and to acknowledge that he hasn't seen such a big improvement and changes almost in any other country, not only in our region. According to IMF anticipation, Serbia is going to have the biggest growth rate almost in an entire Europe in the next 4 years. Speaking about protests, I was facing protests since I became the Prime Minister in 2014. Before that, I was Deputy Prime Minister for 2 years. Since then, we had maybe altogether 6 months without protests. But even having in mind all this stuff, we were progressing well with good growth rates. Also need to tell you one thing, when I became the Prime Minister, public debt, just to see how disciplined we were, public debt to GDP ratio in Serbia was 79%, now it's 43%, twice less than average European public debt to GDP ratio. Yeah. And for the first time in our history, and the only country in an entire region, we got an investment grade from Fitch, and we are getting it from Standard as well, and I believe within 6 months from Moody's as well. It speaks for itself. And speaking about the report, you see everything about economy and fiscal and financial stability, great grades, great marks, which is of an utmost importance for the people, for the citizens. And I really mean now, put my jokes aside, I really mean that we need many things to do regarding rule of law. I'm very ready to participate in that process, or at least to be helpful to the government. And I think that Serbia has long legs, and that we can overtake all the front runners of today, and that we can join European Union relatively soon.
I have, Mr. President, one final short question, and maybe you give me a short answer. You're in your second term. Your term expires in 2027, right?
Yes.
What are your post-presidential plans? What can Europe expect from Alexander Vučić?
I have no plans. I have a big dream to finish this expo. Serbia is hosting a specialized expo in 2027. Expo for us is not just an exhibition. We're going to gather the biggest number of countries so far. The record number was 117 in Astana in Kazakhstan. And till today, we have already gotten confirmation of 127 countries that might participate in that expo. But we need to do a lot of infrastructural works. We need to prepare ourselves. And this is all about my legacy. For the first time, we had a stable currency for the last 12 years in our entire history. We built more hospitals, more science and technological parks than ever before, more kilometers of highways and motorways and high-speed railways than 60 or 65 years before that. This is my legacy. Very proud of that. Haven't decided yet. Will do my best to be supportive to my colleagues regarding securing the legacy and helping them in that political battle. Have no other plans. There are big issues in front of us. And speaking about protests, I appreciate those protests whenever they are calm and tranquil. And in a political sense, I like it. I have to be very honest and finishing with this. Because all their political numbers are going down, plunging. Ours are going up. I'm begging them to keep on protesting, and many thanks for that.
Good. Wonderful conclusion.
Yeah.
Alexander Vučić, President of Serbia, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Of course, different views, as we said earlier. Now, as we promised, we would talk to all the leaders involved in this process, and there is one country that we've not spoken with yet, and that is Albania, but you heard it from the commissioner himself. Countries she believes are the front runners is Albania and Montenegro. So on that note, I'm happy to say we are now joined. He could not be with us today for, well, things that happen in politics, last-minute situation, but he is with us now. It's the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama, who should join us now online. And he will be interviewed by my colleague, Sasha Vakulina. Thank you very much.
We are going to continue the EU enlargement talks at this historic European Enlargement Summit. And yes, indeed, last but certainly not least, the front runner country. Here we go. Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening, and sorry to not be able to be with you. It was not political last minute. It was a technical air problem that I had nothing to do with, but I couldn't take the plane.
Well, we hope next time you're going to be able to join us here in person. And for today, we thank you for joining us here online for this new Euronews format. This is 12 minutes with Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania. Thank you for being here. As you heard today from the report and from Marta Kos, indeed Albania is one of the front runners and the accession negotiations reached unprecedented momentum this year, with preparations for the opening of the last cluster before the end of the year now, quote, well advanced. Now, this report seems very positive for you. What's your take on it?
Yeah, the report is very positive, and the whole year has been extremely positive. We have opened 5 of 6 clusters within only 11 months, which is an absolute record in terms of speed. It's something that until only a few years ago I would not been able to imagine, but this is why life is so beautiful.
So what's the secret? Why don't you share this secret with other candidate countries? What was that key factor? What was your secret in speeding it up so much then?
Beyond the platitude that it's a hard work, I would add that the speed is related with 2 main factors. On one hand, during what I call the years of humiliation, which were the years when the EU Commission was recommending to the Council to open accession talks with Albania, and we were rejected by few countries. We stubbornly prepared for the moment of the opening, and we trained in the hardest way with all our team by simply saying to ourselves, our moment to show our true colors will come, and for that moment we have to be ready. And as a matter of fact, when the moment came, we were much more advanced than maybe others in that precise moment of the opening.
Well, given that this has been indeed a very long process for Albania, it has been 16 years altogether. You've previously spoken about the shifting goalposts by Brussels. Do you feel like this has changed and there is this new push and this situation is over for Albania, but also for the other candidates from the region, because they have been also waiting for a very long time?
And here comes the factor number 2, which is exactly Brussels, that changed its approach and woke up. Unfortunately, it was needed an aggression in the European soil, military aggression, to make Brussels wake up, not simply in the level of the Commission, where we have always found fairness, very painful, very neurotic, but fair, but also in the level of the Council, where the blah, blah, blah of before that, yes, one day we'll be together, yes, we love you, yes, we're going to marry, but we are not ready to talk for the moment, was over, and a new momentum is still here, and the new approach, it's still the case. I hope that this will not fade away, and I very much hope that we will finally get together around the same table.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about whether this momentum and this situation of more of serious commitment, as you described there, whether it is going to last. Albania is now considered one of the front runners. Your goal is to enter the EU by 2030. Now, how do you also see this situation with the shifting goalposts by Brussels changing or possibly not changing for the other countries in your region?
I didn't get the last part of the question.
I will repeat that, Prime Minister. You said that indeed there is a big...
what I said I know, but I don't know what you said.
The question was, do you feel this change by Brussels also now being implemented and being seen for the other countries from your region?
Well, for this you have to ask Brussels, but as far as I am concerned, I might tell you that the 2030 is not a date that I saw in a dream, but it's a deadline that is the result of a very simple calculation. We start from the fact that together with the Commission, in full consensus with the Commission, we have agreed on a calendar that is very ambitious, but it's doable, of homework for us to conclude the accession talks, the negotiations, at the end of 2027. There is a possibility to do it even faster, let's say in the first half of 27, and would be reasons for that, but let's say end of 27. And then the average time we have looked into when it comes to the 27 parliaments to ratify the decision is around 2 years, and this is how we envisage Albania to sit around the table of the EU on 2030. But of course, we are not at all against to be there faster. Now, when it comes to the region as such, I would fully agree, and I echo the words of David McAllister previously, who said this is a very merit-based process. Everyone has its own path, and everyone has to fulfill its own obligations and to do its own homework. So and there are different characteristics in the region. There are different countries, different histories, and so on and so further. When it comes to us, I can say with a very loud voice that we are the most Euro-optimistic nation in Europe, or as Donald Trump would say, on Earth.
Prime Minister, there is a specific focus as well by Brussels. This is slightly on the downside probably of the report, with the focus from Brussels coming regarding the issue of corruption. Now, what I want to ask you is that Albania is the first country in the world to appoint an AI as government minister, specifically tasked with fighting corruption. Now, would you give us an update? How is Diela doing? How is her and your fight going on?
Before going to Diela and her fight, let me remind you and everyone that has still the patience to follow this long day of yours, for which I'm very grateful, that Albania is doing something unseen and unique in the whole region. Our justice reform and our recognition of the not only de jure but the de facto independence of justice, and the full-fledged operation of a special structure against organized crime and corruption has practically created in Albania and for Albania the example that the fight against corruption is something that goes very, very much beyond words, very much beyond makeups, and it goes very deep, and it goes very, let's say, balanced, without looking left, without looking right, independently from who is in government, who is in opposition, who was in power, who is in power, and with a lot of facts that show that what never happened in Albania from the day of independence and creation of the Albanian state in 1912 to until very few years ago, it's happening the last years, something that no other country in the region can claim to have done. And this is not to say that we are better than the others, but this is to say that we have taken it very seriously. And in this moment in time, we accept We accept support, we accept partnership, we accept help, but we don't accept lectures from anyone when it comes on fight against corruption. And of course, when it comes to Diela, she is the product of a systemic fight, which is not just about fighting cases and fighting in the court of law, but which is about fighting through modernization. And we aim to have, within 2027, the first full AI public procurement that will allow speed, transparency, accuracy in levels that are unseen.
Prime Minister, finally, let me ask you to wrap this up. What is the next creative idea and the next creative solution coming from you and from Albania on your way to the European Union membership?
I'm sure you have heard that Diela is pregnant, and she has 83 babies based on the last ecography. So we have to wait for her to give birth to these 83 babies. And in the meantime, I have to tell you one thing that has not been much discussed, that we are the only country in this process to use artificial intelligence in the transfer of the acquis communautaire to our body of law, and to make of it the fastest process ever made in terms of not only translating but also analyzing the impact and drafting and preparing the whole legal packages for the approval in Parliament. So we are trying to run as much as possible and to make as much as possible leapfrogs using technology, artificial intelligence, but without never ever forgetting that our place in Europe is first and foremost deserved because Europe has the best place in the heart of the whole Albanian nation, something that the others cannot pretend.
Prime Minister, I have to follow up. Do you think Brussels could use an AI commissioner?
It's not for me to tell Brussels what to do, but of course I would be very happy to introduce Diela with whomever on the EU side will introduce him or herself like an AI commissioner or an AI technocrat or bureaucrat or whatever else. It doesn't matter.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for this interview and for your time, and thank you very much for joining us here. There was 12 minutes with Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania.
Thank you so much, Sasha Vakalina, for that, and of course Edi Rama, always bringing some humour to EU debates and EU summits. So we thank him so much for being with us here at our summit. Pity he couldn't come physically, but we're thrilled he could join as well, albeit remotely. And I'm afraid that brings our summit almost to the end. It's been incredible. What are your main takeaways?
Yes, I mean, all of the leaders that we spoke, obviously the many challenges that are happening, I would say. But I'm not going to give names. I think there's two countries that definitely make it before 2030, two that are on the line, one that is absolutely not going to do it. But I'm not going to give names.
As we can see, it's a deeply complex topic. It's a sensitive topic. It's a fascinating topic, and we've only really scratched the surface with this Euronews Enlargement Summit, the one of its kind event. For more, of course, you can read our live blog. Thank you so much to all our reporters in our newsroom today at Euronews in Brussels who've been writing up all the various articles on the different countries and their path, their very long path towards Brussels membership. One thing is clear, Euronews has put EU enlargement on the agenda. The Commission, as we've seen, has put it back on the agenda, and we're deeply grateful to you all for being with us here at this historic Enlargement Summit. And thank you as well to all our viewers who've been with us as well.
And we'll follow up next year. We'll do the temperature check and the progress card.
We will. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you soon.
See you next year.
On Euronews.
Thank you very much.